Friends, and welcome into another episode of the CALIVEGAN podcast, the number one calisthenics podcast for vegans. And I'm not even joking. It probably is the only one anyway, so it makes it the best. And today we have another guest. His handle on Instagram is Luca Fit Health. And he's vegan, he's super strong, one of these guys that you would definitely think is on steroids, but I think he's natural. He's just been training since a very long time and has very good genetics. But he's definitely one of these people that when I see online and I see how big it is, it makes on now. Just accepted his request. Hopefully we don't have the same problem that I had yesterday. Are we having the same problem we were having yesterday with the guest? Hey Luca, can you come in? Or you cannot? Let's invite you. There you go.
There, now I can see you. Perfect. Awesome.
Hello, Luca. I am good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me or having this discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for coming, man. I'm sure that you are a very known name as well in the vegan space, as especially for the fitness side of things. Where are you calling from? Where are you right now in the world?
Yeah, so I'm actually living in Switzerland. I was born and raised here, although as my last name might be implying, my heritage is Italian, my ethnicity is Italian, so both my parents are Italian.
Yeah.
So I was born, raised here, still live here. I actually love Switzerland. It's a beautiful country in my opinion. So where are you based right now?
So right now I'm in Italy. By the way, someone in the comments just said that we look like twins. We definitely look Italian, And so I'm in Italy right now, but I live in south of Spain, Malaga. And so yeah, Luca, today we're going to talk about a little bit of fitness. What are your views? What has been your story into fitness and into veganism? But before we kind of move into some more specific questions, would you like to give an introduction on who you are, what you do, how long have you been vegan? Just a quick one.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with the last part right there, because I guess that's what's interesting most people that might never heard about me, actually. So, by the way, thanks for having me on. I really much appreciated you reaching out and doing this, doing all these lives with other vegan influencers. As you implied in the first message, we need more. We need more people like you and me and many others. Although there's some, we still need way more vegan influencers out there, fitness, calisthenics, whatever you're interested in. So, yeah, thanks. So my journey began, 15 years ago, 16 years ago. I had a lot of gut issues, so I basically didn't feel really well. So I had the feeling that I had to throw up my food. And I went from doctor to doctor, and we have amazing doctors here, and all they saw was that it was inflamed. And then I stumbled across information like, hey, try out this plant-based diet, which back in the day, we didn't call it vegan diet, although again, vegan diet, some people take issues with that terminology, and I understand, but they called this diet strict vegetarian diet, basically, back in the day. And I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And I started feeling better. And my nutritionist told me back in the day that, hey, you can now start eating eggs again. You can now start eating milk products again and see what's causing this inflammation and, this intolerance or sensitivity that you might have. And I didn't want to because I felt amazing. I was like, you know what, let me check out if there's actually some data out there. And that's where my interest in nutrition began. That's where I started researching it a little bit more about, is it healthy to be eating and adopting a plant-based diet long-term? Because even to this day, I don't know many people surrounding me that are eating 100% plant-based, although there's way more, thankfully. And yeah, so that's how my journey began. And I also started training around the same time. I started doing training before, 1 year before I turned plant-based. And that was not much I can actually do because it didn't feel great. So I couldn't really build a lot of muscle back in the day. But yeah, fast forward to 9 years after that, and I stumbled across some unwanted scenario in Bali, in which did you actually visit Bali before? Have you been in Bali?
I've been in Southeast Asia. I've been in Philippines, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, but not in Indonesia.
So you've been around many great places, I see. Bali is certainly one of them, but they serve something called luwak coffee. Luwak is a beautiful animal, and I guess you heard about, the poop coffee.
Yes.
That's luwak coffee in Bali. I guess there's more. I'm not an expert with poop coffees and stuff like that, but we were visiting a plantation once because till that point I was plant-based, but I still bought wallets made out of leather, and I didn't pay much attention to besides my diet. And we went visiting a plantation and they offered us luwak coffee, and I wasn't really sure what it was. I heard about it. I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's try it. And they also showed us the animal. And he was held in a small cage filled with holes in which, the poop could cigar through. And I felt so bad that I had given these people money. And that's where my vegan journey began. I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm already eating a plant-based diet. Like, it's so easy to not find, the hardest part is, in my humble opinion, the diet, the plant-based diet, in order to become vegan. And that's where kind of like my journey began. So fast forward to today, I don't want to bore anyone else. I'm trying to become
interesting story.
Thanks. I'm trying to become a registered dietitian. I'm on my way there. I still have around 4 months to go. And I'm also a personal trainer, more specialized in, fitness training. But also, like you, did calisthenics for 3 years, many years back, actually. So yeah, that's kind of like my story. How long have you actually been vegan, if I may ask? And what's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So because I can really relate to you, because my transition towards veganism started like you in Southeast Asia, because I think that over there they have more of a connection with like the cruelty and the impact that they have towards the environment. And here in Europe, it's much more hidden. So when I was traveling in Southeast Asia, I did see dogs inside of cages. I did see some animals very mistreated, something that in in Europe you don't really see. And I saw a lot of plastics in the rivers. The rivers were so polluted in some of the cities, the big city like Manila and Bangkok. A lot of pollution. You can see how the human is impacting the environment. And this is how I started to realize that a change was needed. And I had an intoxication, a food intoxication during my trip. And since I was already in that mental place where I was realizing that something wrong was going on, I started to watch some documentaries. And my first understanding was that we are really fucking up the environment. And I went plant-based for the environment. And only 2.5 years later, when COVID hit, I had the time again to stop and get more information. I was starting to be an online coach, and I wanted to know what vegan was about, because it was going to become part of my content creation and stuff. And I realized that activists, they were not talking about environment, but it was about the animals. So I started to know more about what happens in slaughterhouses, made that connection with animals, because like for my side and my life story, I was a species. Like when I was a kid, I saw, chickens in cages, rabbits in cages. I saw them being killed. So I feel like I saw them. I had this strong uh, thoughts and way of thinking that animals are below us. But thanks for listening to Joy Armstrong. I just needed to hear the word, just hearing that they are people, they are different, but they want to live, they want to play, they want to eat. And since I was already plant-based, as again was easy to understand that was wrong, and that even a little bit of animal products inside of my diet wasn't okay. Um, and so I've been vegan 5 years, and I think it could help people, because it's interesting the fact that you had some digestive problem and you basically cured it with a plant-based diet. What was exactly the issue that you have with your digestion? Do you know?
So, well, looking back, honestly, I'm not a big fan of anecdotes, so I'm glad that you bring this up, because I rarely speak on my platform about this story, because I truly believe that we should look at the totality of evidence and not use my personal experience to push something. But looking back, I ate a pretty shitty diet. Not gonna lie. Tons of processed foods, tons of meat, tons of, the standard diet that you're used to see all over the place now, or in rich countries, I guess, or in wealthy countries, I should say. And it's hard to tell what really caused it. And maybe the diagnosis was just an inflammation. Looking back, it could lead into morbus Crohn back in the day when I had it, because my brother had the similar issues. And I was lucky that I tried out new things, so the plant-based diet, and it eliminated a lot of these processed foods. And maybe some animal-based products were also causing these digestive issues. Again, it's hard to pinpoint out because I eliminated a lot of it. Today, they probably would have run more tests in today's age, maybe test out for intolerances and sensitivities. Yeah, if everything is ruled out, they would probably have diagnosed me with IBS or something like that. So either IBS or more, but it's a little bit hard to tell, because I was lucky enough to kind of like change my diet, and it has helped me. And
But
clearly,
that's cool to hear, because I do have some conversation with people that that say they don't go vegan because there is some kind of digestive issue. But it's nice to hear one side of the story, that you actually cured your just digestive problems through a plant-based diet. On the other side, I think that dairy, for example, basically most population is lactose intolerance. It's a continuum. Some people are not that much, some people a lot intolerant, but I think overall, like everyone after eating a lot of cheese has some kind of effect in their digestion. So yeah, probably animal products don't do good to our digestive system, and especially as you said, you were eating a lot of processed food. Maybe the lack of fibers was also something that wasn't doing very good to your digestive system. So when it comes to your fitness journey, something interesting that you said, because for example, me and Miguel, which I talked to yesterday, we both had a strong past in sports since we were kids. But for what I understand, you're a little bit different. You started your fitness journey more with more commitment later on in your life. Is that correct?
That's right. Although I was always into sports as well.
Okay.
Just different kinds of sports, actually. So uh, I feel like the first sport that I can remember doing has been karate, uh, judo, and some boxing. Now, whenever I bring this up, I tell people I suck at sparring. I never did sparring. I just wanted to go and have some fun. And doing out of, kind of like, I was more into like the fitness types of trainings and stuff like that. That's why I did it back in the day. But resistance training started, I really started taking kind of like my fitness game up when so before I started developing all these gut issues, these digestive issues, I actually went to boxing and I went to kind of like fitness boxing and stuff like that. But I couldn't control the symptoms. So sometimes I was there and I started to feel ill, and I had to stop the training and go home. And it wasn't nearly kind of like, it's like 45 minutes from where I used to live. So I wanted to search something more in my proximity, and I also wanted to do something that allowed me to go in and out whenever I felt like it. And that was kind of like fitness, and that's where I started to turn into fitness. Now, not too long after I joined the gym, I started to get better. Once I got better, a colleague of mine, one of my best friends, Mario, came to me and showed me like a video of Hannibal for King.
Oh yeah.
Which I guess you should be familiar with because you're doing calisthenics.
Old school, yeah.
Absolutely. Like he showed me the video, was like, dude, I'm like, what the hell does he do? Like, is he into weightlifting? Like, he uses just his own body. I'm like, shut up. And he showed me some clips and was like, what the hell? He's floating in air. And that's where my calisthenics journey started as well. I did it like for 3-4 years or maybe more. And then I started to mix things together. And now for the last, I don't know, 3-5 years, something like that, I've been going to the gym basically and just lifting weights. So it's been a little bit up and down, but yeah, that's kind of like my journey. But you seem like when did you actually start lifting? I mean, you look like you've been adding for really some time now. You look great.
I mean, like I would say that you're one of these person that they look at, and then I look at me as like, why is he so big and I'm not? Yeah. But yeah, I started pretty early. I started when I was 14 years old, going to the gym, and then it kind of bored me to lift weights, and this is how I got into calisthenics. Unfortunately, though, I don't know, maybe this is something that kind of happened to you as well, and that's why you went back to weights. But I didn't really know how to train with calisthenics. It's a little bit more difficult to effectively train with calisthenics as you do with weight training, because you need to find this progression of exercises. You cannot push to failure in the same way you do with weights. You need to focus more in technical failure, or otherwise you are wasting energy in repetitions that are not effective and that really slow down your progress. But I didn't know all of these things at the time, and I was just trying things, just looking at Animal for King, Bar Brothers, all these guys, Chris Area, and I was just trying things. And so I wasn't really going anywhere. I was just kind of maintaining my strength and physique and enjoying my training until I got to London 5 years ago. Well, I was already living in London, but at some point, because I was struggling with lower back pain, I I was struggling with lower back pain and I couldn't train with weights at all. And after a year with doctors telling me, that I couldn't do nothing, basically, and like when you say to someone like us that you cannot train, you're like, that's not a fucking option. Do you understand? I am depressed. Give me some training. So And so yeah, I decided, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm just going to be doing body weight training, pull-ups, push-ups, the basics. And then I got lucky because there in London there is a community of calisthenics well ingrained. So I met people that knew how to train effectively. And with time and with my personal training certification and keep studying things, I managed to find a way to train as effectively as I was doing with weights, with calisthenics, and yeah, definitely love calisthenics much more than weight training. Um, were you how old were you when you started with strength training?
What was the question again? How old I was, or
Yeah.
also good question. That was basically 1 year before I turned plant-based, so around 16 years ago, and around 17, 16, something like that. That's where I started.
Okay, you also
It's
were pretty young.
Yes, I started pretty young. I don't know what got me into it, to be honest. Well, I my motivations back in the day actually was more like, some animes like Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Z, and all these kind of things. Those were things that motivated me to go to the gym when I was 16 years old, I guess. Probably my brother as well, and the surroundings, what kind of like got me into fitness as well, because we joined the same gym, I guess, together simultaneously at the same time. So, yeah,
Did your brother went vegan too?
no, he's actually not vegan. And actually, in my whole family, there's not a vegan. I'm actually the only one that is vegan. But the great thing about it is basically, well, I guess we vegans all have been through the same phase in which we struggle to, when someone else is eating animal-based products in front of you, you struggle with it and stuff like that. I went through the phase too, and I've seen something kind of like really powerful happening in the passive approach. And now I want to preface this by saying I'm not advocating for any, activism on how I do it and say, wow, this is the best thing and so on and so forth. I just kind of like telling you what worked best for me, because when I turned plant-based and I felt so much better and turned vegan so many years ago, I started to tell my family about it, like, hey, watch this documentary, stop eating that, and so on and so forth, and was a little bit aggressive with my approach, I guess, and they didn't took it lightly. I mean, we always have been in great relationship, thankfully, but they pretty much rejected it. However, I started then, giving up on that stuff, and they saw that I was getting bitter, and more importantly, I had the best blood work I've ever had in my whole life, being vegan, and I still do, actually. That's what kind of like opened their eyes, and now they're still eating meat, but compared to previously, they eat meat once per week or so, fish, and yeah, a lot of plants. So their diet has become way more plant-based. Well, of course, I'm still hoping that eventually they will give up on meat. But this passive approach, I'm seeing like, hey, it's working great for him. He's been kind of like self-employed. He's been teaching others, and it's been working for them as well. So this kind of like approach has worked greater than the other approaches. Again, for me, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong approach. We all do things differently, but I'm curious to hear about your experience. Like, is there a vegan in your family, or are you the lonely wolf, I guess?
Yeah, I'm the lonely wolf for sure. I think my mom is kind of vegan. I guess I don't know. I guess she doesn't value it enough to accept sometimes the social pressure, maybe from other family members and from the boyfriend to kind of stick to veganism all the time. But she's basic, now that we're together, she's vegan all the time. There are not many animal products in the fridge. But however, Luca, to street activism. I've done a lot of it. I've had thousands of conversations with people about veganism, and it's just the nature of it that people don't go vegan. So, so what you say is right. In fact, like with the people that are closer to me, I try to be, we could say, kind of softer. Like I allow them to get to know me first. You know, I don't push veganism too much, but then I will go straight directly to the reason why it's important to be vegan and what happens to animals. I think that what's important is that you give to the person all the information needed to give them a reason to go vegan. One of those is obviously being an inspiration. You know, like as you said, that people like you and me, like people, most people you will meet, they will be at a lower level of you, whether it's athleticism or health. So they look at you as an inspiration. So that's one thing that's very important. And the other thing is give them, the other reason, the animals and what happens to the animals, and make them understand that if they care about animals, their action, they are not aligning with their thought and with their values. So they need to know this. I don't think it needs to be necessarily harsh on people to say this. It's just the way it is. People often don't think about it, and it's important to speed up their thought process. And then, the documentary, I think as well, you need to get people to watch some videos because they don't realize the people is so brainwashed from advertisement with the happy cows and happy chickens and free chickens. They don't realize that, the act of slaughtering is not a peaceful thing. Oh, but animals are slaughtered in humane ways. It doesn't exist. You're dreaming. So that's why it's important to show them those videos. And then you will have people that might go vegan, and most people will not go vegan. And then over time, I would say that yes, like being passive and not being too pushing, because of often, as you said, it can affect yourself. You can become yourself bitter, fighting with these people that at the end of the day don't want to make this change. So yeah, I mean, for what I understand, you already told me that the going plant-based was definitely super healthy for you and healthier with the blood tests. What about strength training? You start strength training. Give us a bicep flex, because show us what's the.
Well,
yeah, you're very lean. Wow, that's great. And so what did that to you? Building those muscles, becoming stronger.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because you often hear people or see kind of like in the comment section, like, well, you build that muscle by eating meat. That's how you were able to build that physique.
Yeah, you did it completely basically on a plant-based diet, right?
Exactly. And this whole conversation about building muscle and plants really also is starting to shift into scientific field as well. So yeah, I basically I built my physique eating 100% plant-based proteins, basically, if you so will, because yes, I did go on a plant-based diet before I did train. I started doing resistance training before eating a plant-based diet. But during that year, I was sick. I couldn't really train. To give you a kind of like a perspective, I was, because I didn't eat it a lot, I can't remember the numbers, but I was around 66 kilograms, 65. And now I'm shifting always a little bit between 78, 80 kilograms, and I'm leaner and have more muscle mass than around 15, 16 years ago or something like that. So
what's your height?
170 centimeters. That's I believe in feet 5'7". So I'm not that tall. So I'm not a tall guy, but yeah, that's kind of like my weight in which I feel comfortable with. But the interesting thing is, also scientists used to believe, because, scientists always kind of like look at the totality and the best evidence available. And that's what shapes their point of view, as every good scientist should be doing. They are not biased, but they look at the whole evidence in its totality, and that's how they shape their opinion, or their point of view, I should say. And not many years ago, like before 2020, I guess, the best available evidence was telling us that animal-based proteins were better at building muscles for a couple of reasons. There were two scoring systems that have been developed. One is called the PDCAS, something like that, and the other, the one that replaced it, was the DIS scoring system. And they had flaws because they were primarily done on animals. They gave animals the plants in raw form. Yes, even beans were given them raw, and not in meals, but in isolated kind of like quantities. So like no human is eating. I mean, you and I, we are clearly not just eating raw beans and stuff like that. And we're not animals. And a bunch of studies also came out done in humans, looking at meals in isolation and measuring muscle protein synthesis. For those of you that never heard about muscle protein synthesis, that are listening to this, it's basically like when the body's building proteins that help you build muscles, basically, because our body is always building proteins for all kinds of different stuffs and purposes, for transporting, for enzymes, or even proteins, and so on and so forth. But there are some issues because muscle protein synthesis doesn't always dictate muscle growth, and it was done in one meal. Fast forward to 2020, 2021, that's where we got our first randomized controlled trial, looking at the strict plant-based diet for, I believe it was 10 weeks, again, maybe it was 12, something like that, against an omnivorous diet, and they matched proteins and calories. And they also had a crossover design, meaning this group crossed over after halftime and started eating a strict plant-based diet, and the strict plant-based diet eaters started eating an omnivorous diet. They all followed the same training protocol, so the same workout program, and they saw no difference. Fast forward to today's, we have two more trials that had designs, and they also saw no difference. And this is the best evidence that we have. Again, it's 3 trials. It's not a lot, but it's the best evidence, because whenever you come across something that tells you, oh, this caused less muscle protein synthesis or a little bit less muscle growth, it's usually just looking at one meal, and one meal doesn't reflect real life. What reflects real life is giving people many meals throughout the day and following them for weeks, let them do the same workouts program, and see what's the best outcome. So that's why many scientists, even today, and also some other doctors well versed into the scientific literature that I've been following that are not vegan, look at the totality of evidence and tell you, as of right now, as soon as you reach a certain protein target, which seems to be roughly around 1.3 grams, maybe a little bit less, of protein to 1.6 grams per kilogram of protein, we see no difference between a strict plant-based diet and an omnivorous diet. And anecdote again, I always really didn't care much about it when some people told me, well, you could have built more muscles and stuff like that eating meat, and was like, I'm not so sure about it. I feel like I'm doing great. Looking at my surroundings, I feel like I'm building more than enough muscles eating plants alone. But yeah, this is kind of like also looking at the scientific field filled with personal anecdotes. And as you, I guess, having had the privilege to coach also many people, I don't see any reasons why animal-based protein should be superior, at least to the thresholds that we talked about in muscle growth, which you should be in anyways if you want to build muscles. So that's kind of...
I want to ask you, since you are studying nutrition and you're obviously very knowledgeable, and you made a very good description of how scientists should give out information looking at the best evidence available out there. And so, but you also come up with a little bit of, anecdote and personal experience. Do you think that's important as well when we analyze things? Because, for example, in my opinion, like now it's more clear for the science part, but I've never worried about protein, even though like the science was pushing the fact that you need to eat more protein. I was like, like even when I was an omnivore, like when people would ask me, because that's what people do, like when they see you with muscle and they're like, what do you eat? I was like, and I was like, bro, I train hard at the gym. It's not really about what you eat. Like I am 20 times stronger than you. You can't do a pull-up. I can do pull-ups with 30 kilograms attached to my waist. For me, that's what is building those. Yeah, sure. And I'm eating in a certain way, uh, but I don't get crazy about it. And what I've personally come to realize is that there is so much talk around protein, and people that are not like me, that have not these long time experience into training, and have this, let's call it personal understanding, that the reason why I'm strong and muscular is mainly because of my training. They think that you cannot build muscle if you do not eat higher amount of protein. So my message out there is this, that like it's not a big deal. It's just a little bit of optimization that you get out of these higher amount of protein, where eating like the 1.6 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Yes, I 100% agree. And there was actually a study done, I believe, at elder people. If I recall correctly, it's been a while since I read it. And they wanted to test out this hypothesis, like what happens if we increase the protein intake, but we don't tell people to do any resistance training. And you saw that muscle mass, muscle protein synthesis, almost like a flat line. But as soon as you started giving them the same amount of protein and added resistance training into their life, the curve went from flat to like this. So this is basically goes into the same category as telling people you should eat more calcium as you age and add vitamin D, which is great advice. But if you don't use your bones by doing some resistance training or by going walking and something like that, you're going to face eventually the same problems as with your muscles. So you can kind of like, it's not a very vegan thing to say, sorry about that, but you can catch two birds with one stone by basically doing some resistance training as you start to age,
Yeah.
basically. So I 100% agree with you. And by the way, about the anecdotes, that's a really interesting kind of like a discussion to have. Now, I feel like anecdotes are important for the individuals, but one should always be open-minded about it. Because, of course, if you look at yourself and you build muscles and you eat a diet that is considered by science as healthy, which a plant-based diet is certainly plays a big part in that as well, perfect. Go for it. I mean, I was actually having the same mindset as you. I didn't care much about what else people told me, like, why don't you eat a little bit of whey or something like that? I was like, no, thank you. It's been working great for me. So, but where we should be a little bit more careful of with anecdotes is something that we see, for example, in the carnivore space, because they are also using anecdotes as definitive truth. And anecdotes can be powerful because with an anecdote, if we never knew each other and we basically kind of like met each other and walked down the street here and told people like, hey, if you want to get as jacked as possible, you start eating just plants. And you and I, we both know it's about protein and especially working hard at the gym, right? And it doesn't matter what diet you're eating, basically. We just choose a plant-based diet for ethical, moral, and environmental reasons. But again, we are being for the animals, so there's that. But if you look at the carnivores, they might feel better because they eliminate it all. And if you told me like to go carnivore, let's turn the clock back 15, 16 years ago, I've had all these gut issues, to eat just meat. Again, maybe it was meat. Maybe I would have felt terrible. But if you told me to go carnivore and I felt better, I would still look at the nutritionist and I would still have, talk to the experts and look at the totality of evidence, what it's telling us. So this is why anecdotes can be powerful, but you should always not be blinded by your own anecdotes or by the anecdotes of others, in my opinion, because this is why science exists. They test out theories and they think about many different covariables or confounders that you and I will never think about, right? When we look at these things. But again, in context of muscle building, it's, well, if you're building muscles, doing it the way you're doing, keep doing it, right? But in the context of your health, one should be really careful about relying on anecdotes, in my opinion,
Yeah.
which, yes. But
I think it needs to be, anecdotes and knowledge and, science-based knowledge together, because otherwise, you could go to someone that's smoking and, this causes cancer. No, I've been smoking 20 years and I don't have any cancer. It's fine. We shouldn't do that.
This is happening to the carnivore people, they will state, well, I'm feeling fine. I cured all my other issues, which is great. I mean, you and I, we are humans. We love when humans are doing great, right? But to what extent? Expense, basically, because their cholesterol levels are always through the roof. That's what they're reporting, and they're reporting it like they're celebrating it. Like, see, my LDL is up there. My total cholesterol is up there. And then they make up facts that high cholesterol levels are not bad for you. And they will create all different scenarios. But if you look at the totality of evidence, it's really hard to go against that, right? I mean, if you're someone that tells us, well, cholesterol levels should be disregarded, high cholesterol levels, then what you're saying is, I don't believe in science, because all the totality of evidence is leading in one direction. And nowadays, when someone actually is having this argument with me, which happens quite a lot with the content I'm doing, I always bring up something that none of the carnivore people have ever actually made up a good argument against that. And that's the genetic studies. They go by the name of Mendelian randomization. So what's happening is they call it also nature's controlled trial, because unfortunately there are people that are born with a genetic condition that predisposes them to have high LDL levels since birth. So they can smoke, they can drink alcohol, or they can eat a plant-based diet, they can move around, their LDL levels always stays high. Doesn't matter what they're doing in their life because of their genetics. It's called hypercholesterolemia, basically, or familiar hypercholesterolemia for those. And there's other variations which are a little bit more aggressive, and so on and so forth. But if you take these people and you study them, you know what we see? They have a 3.9 times absolute risk of experiencing cardiovascular disease, or a cardiovascular event, I should say, in their lifetime. 400 times increased risk. And not absolute risks, but not kind of like relative risk, but absolute risk. And this is huge. On top of that, their mortality rates are also way higher. They have increased risk for all-cause mortality as well. And these are genetic studies. Whenever I bring this up, nobody can argue against that. Then we have randomized control trials, clinical trials, and clinical settings done showing the same thing. We have prospective cohort studies, observational data showing the same thing. But people believe in their anecdote instead of believing at that, which is disturbing.
Yeah, absolutely disturbing, because some of these people are, they have millions of followers and they are, literally building up things from thin air. They completely ignore the rest of the evidence. And what's interesting is that I think the carnivore kind of boomed a couple of years ago, and there were a lot of people that were strictly eating meat, and one of those was Paul Saladino. Probably heard of him. And he realized that his testosterone level was dropping, and as he starts eating more fruits and more carbohydrate, he found that his hormones level and testosterone level went back to a normal level. So it's kind of they're just trying, and they kind of ignoring what we already know, and they're trying something new from scratch and realizing that it doesn't work. But Luca, one thing that I noticed from you is that you're absolutely shredded. So I want to know how you eat, and how do you manage calories to stay so lean? Do you do cardio every day, or you move a lot, or it's mainly about diet? How do you stay so shredded? Is it genetic as well? Like, were you always kind of this lean? Because, for example, for me, I was chubby, when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and actually for me, it's a daily fight with food. Like, I have to be disciplined in order not to put on too much extra fat. And if I don't train, then things likely go into eating even more. And yeah. So what's your approach to nutrition?
Well, I would love to hear your approach as well, hearing your background story. Amazing that you've built physique like that. I look at your pictures and your videos, and I was like, wow, he looks so jacked and lean and stuff like that. Wow, amazing that you even been chubby before. So kudos to you, and that's amazing. Well, for me, it's more, I was a little bit lucky. I was never overweight or chubby. I always had what you would call a healthy weight, basically. And during that year that I couldn't really eat a lot, or if I ate, I felt miserable. Still to this day, I don't have much trouble not eating, actually. Now, I don't consider myself as someone that has to force himself to eat. Not at all. I can eat a lot. But if I go on a plane, I can be on the plane for 12 hours and not eat anything. Just like that. It's fine with me. Eventually, I will feel it because, as you already alluded to, I'm someone that moves around a lot. How much? On average, I do around 19,000 steps per day. I also have a treadmill here in front of me, which I'm kind of like walking and using 1.5 hours per day, just to study or to work, basically. And on top of that, I go to the gym or do a little bit of cardio and so on and so forth. So I move around a lot. Having said that, I consume around 2,800 to 3,000 calories. Sometimes I go a little bit above that, sometimes a little bit underneath that. I've tracked my calories for a short time period just to get a sense on how much I started eating, because many years ago I wanted to get a little bit leaner. And that's where I saw that I was eating so many calories. I was like, what the hell is even happening? And once you start your calories, as you probably also experience yourself, you're like, man, I didn't know nut butter had so many calories, or I didn't know this types of seed had so many calories, and so on and
Just
so forth.
olive oil. Olive oil.
Olive oil is also like one of the most, I mean, as healthy as it may be, the calories you don't feel the calories from olive oil. That's a really great example. So I started tracking them, and I started to realize, hey, I want to keep the volume the same of the foods that I'm eating, but I want to keep my calories lower for like 400, 500 calories that I was eating. That's where I turned them back down to 3,000 calories, 2,800 calories. And that's where I stayed roughly. And today I don't track calories anymore. I eat like 2 times per day. Not saying it's optimal, but it works best for me. And these 2 meals are huge, really huge actually. Especially the first meal that I've been eating. I believe it's almost a little bit under 2,000 calories, something like that. So a really huge meal, just the first meal. And that's the only thing that I'm weighing, because I know with that meal I can go overboard. If I just keep eating, because I love to watch stuff, I love to learn while I'm eating as well. And I don't pay much attention on how much I'm eating. And so that's why that's the only thing. And for dinner, I only track the high calories foods with weighing them. For example, I know that rice, pasta, as an Italian, you can dig in. Those genes are present in my body as well. So I just weigh those, and I don't track anything else like vegetables, fruits, and stuff like that, basically. So that's how I manage to do it. So I eat 2 huge meals, which again, going back to kind of like what works best for you and what's best for muscle growth. If you want to optimize muscle growth, you probably want to opt for 3, 4 meals per day, I guess. That would be a little bit better, but it doesn't work for me
Bro,
when I wake up hungry. So here's
you look amazing. I mean, very good physique. So obviously, eating multiple times per day, it wouldn't make that much of a difference, right? This is how I look at things, you know, when you do these little changes, you know, like I already look good, I'm making progress. It's probably not that important, and it's probably more important to do what it feels right, right for you, and it's more sustainable.
yeah.
Do you drink alcohol?
Uh, uh, that's a hard question to answer. Do I drink alcohol? Occasionally. So what does that mean? The last time I drank alcohol was when I was, before COVID,
Wow.
visiting high best friends. And we were out partying. I guess you know Thailand. Partying there is amazing. And yeah, we went a little bit overboard with the alcohol. Well, overboard. I wasn't super drunk or something like that. Just that's where I last remember. No, that's actually not true. Sorry. Um, the last time I drank was when I was meeting my beautiful girlfriend, actually, when we were starting to date each other. I was having sangria. Um, yeah, that's the last time, and that was 3 years ago. So, and
Wow. Well, that's occasionally. That's very like occasionally. Okay. Now, I personally now I've been sober. I've been sober 2 months, but it's more like forcing myself to stay sober because I have a kickboxing fight coming in May, and I want to optimize recovery. So that's why I wanted to stay sober because any you know any use drugs, alcohol, whatever, it's like you're climbing on a ladder, and then you drink and you go back down and you need to climb again. So this is how it feels. So I really force myself to stay sober now. There was a question from a follower, and which actually good friend of mine. Do you take supplements? If so, which ones?
yes, so and just a small note, I have a call coming up in about 8 minutes. I
Okay.
apologize for that.
Yeah,
But
no
yeah,
worries.
so supplements, that's a really interesting story. I would like to answer that in two different parts. So once supplements I take for health, that's LGO, omega 3s. That's something that I'm taking, both EPA and DHA combined around 1 gram per day. Um, then I'll take the B12, obviously, as vegans should actually be doing, and vitamin D3, especially during winter, which I guess you know winters is really a winter around. Well, maybe not in where you live. I guess
No
I'm not so sure
winter,
about. Do they have winter over there, or
not really.
not really? Right?
Hmm.
Malaga, by the way, is a really beautiful place. I've been there twice. It's amazing. But apart from that, honestly, I don't take much else besides creatine. Because anything else, honestly, all the other supplements might be okay-ish at best, but they're not really well tested. Even carnitine has mixed results, as so many carnivore bros make it out to be, for example. If you look at the research, some studies show it works, some studies show it don't really work, some show a little bit of risk increase in certain things. So I only recommend creatine, but with creatine, there's also big asterisks that we have to add. And that is that around 20 to 30% of the people are non-responder to creatine, meaning their creatine stores within their muscles are already full to begin with. And that's genetically driven. So if those people take creatine, it might
Interesting.
for them, actually.
Okay. I didn't know that. I actually stopped taking creatine, but more, more for the sake of, I don't want to do things with supplements. I
Ah,
think I just want to I actually promote the use of creatine eventually because I did see some benefits in the use. But when I don't use it, even though I probably lose a couple of kilos because of from the water retention, but strength-wise, I do fine. And I just want to be that example that, supplements are not necessary and that food is good by itself. But since you are on a rush, I just want to take one important takeaway because, you're very lean and this is very impressive. You're shredded, you're not lean, you're shredded.
okay.
And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to being shredded is moving. If you can move throughout the day, maybe you have an active job, or is really what helps the most to stay shredded, because once you're burning a lot of calories, you can eat 3,000 calories, for example, and still creating that small calorie deficit. It's fine, like, because usually if you're eating healthy, 3,500 calories, you're really pushing it. So it's much easier to stay on a small calorie deficit when you're moving a lot. Personally, when I was a bartender, I was very active. I was eating all day because I'm like that. I'm like anxious, and I have ADHD, and I have an addictive personality. So food was another thing that I would go to all the time. And but I still managed to stay lean because I was moving all day during work. And so that was an important takeaway I wanted to remind. And Luca, so do you want to send people to some material of yours? Do you have a free resource that people can get some good information from you?
Oh, thank you very much. And honestly, besides my Instagram page, I also upload videos on YouTube. TikTok is pretty much the same video. So whether you want to, I guess if you're in Instagram, you don't have to bother to go to TikTok. And yeah, that's basically all I'm offering right now. I don't have anything else basically. Of course, my coaching business and stuff like that, but I don't want to push that here and stuff like that. But more importantly, I was really impressed with your backstory, and I have even more respect now. I mean, when you sent me the voice message, I was like, huh, I feel like that face looks familiar. Maybe I've come across his page and stuff like that, and then look at your picture, like, wow, amazing, and doing calisthenics. And now hearing your backstories, especially also the struggles you've been to uh, as you mentioned, yeah, addictive personality makes things even harder. And I mean, and you even are now preparing for a fight. Like,
Yeah,
wow,
I'm
that's
ready.
so great. When is the fight happening actually?
It's the 11th of May. It's going to be in the evening. I'm actually going to go live on Instagram as well, and I'll definitely record the thing and post it too.
Well, then of course I will be looking forward to look at the live and be cheering you on virtually. Like, hey, kick whatever your opponent's ass may be, kick that ass hard
I'll
in
try.
like humane way. Like,
Yes. All right. So look, it was nice to have you. And for the one that are watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know in the comment what was the topic that you liked the most, anything that you want us to expand on. Same thing on Instagram. And we'll see you soon in the next one.
yeah.
Ciao.
This was a lot of fun. Let's do this again and again. Thanks for having me, and thanks for being a voice for the animals. I mean, again, amazing page. If someone else is watching from my page, because Instagram Lives also shows up on my page, I highly encourage you to go check out his page. It's amazing, and he has a different approach, but an amazing approach which clearly works. And I love your message. Like you didn't like weightlifting, but you loved kind of like lifting your own weight and doing some body weight training. And again, how you do it doesn't matter.
It's
We're all
going
in this together.
to
Yeah.
it's going to cut off in 5 seconds because I have a 1 hour limit.
All right. And yeah,